The corpse of the king sprawled on the steps below the Iron Throne, and his blood still gleamed wetly in the torchlight when the great doors groaned open for Lord Tywin Lannister. Jaime stood before the throne, golden hair disordered, the white cloak about his shoulders splashed and stiff with red. His sword was bare. For all that he wore the white of the Kingsguard, Lannister crimson seemed to cling to him more thoroughly than Valyrian steel. The chamber stank of iron and smoke and something else, some acrid ghost of the wildfire that had almost been. Servants huddled near the walls. A half-dozen Lannister spearmen, uncertain in this alien hall, shifted their feet on the black and white floor. Tywin took it in with a single sweep of his pale green eyes. The toppled torches, the scorched mark near the far wall where one brazier had spilled, the dead pyromancer with his green-stained beard, the torn golden cloak in Jaime's fist as his son looked up at him, jaw set. "You took your time," Jaime said, voice hoarse. Tywin did not answer that. His gaze lingered instead on the madman's ruin. Aerys lay face down, one hand outstretched, nails broken and caked with his own blood where he had clawed at the steps. His robes, once rich with red and black thread, had been slashed open. The back of his neck was a ruin, his spine visible through the torn flesh where Jaime's sword had bitten deep. The king's crown lay halfway down the steps. One of the rubies had popped out and rolled into a crack. The silence stretched. Jaime's grip tightened on the sword. Tywin mounted the steps, the crimson of his own cloak trailing behind him. 2 steps up, he halted, looking down at Aerys Targaryen for the first time in years. The last time he had stood before this man, he had been Hand of the King, the realm prosperous, his own name feared from the arbor to the wall. Then the insults, the humiliations, the dismissal. "Who gave the order?" Tywin asked at last. Jaime's mouth twisted. "He did. He ordered the whole city burned. I thought you should find it still standing." A servant made a soft, shocked sound somewhere in the shadows. Tywin ignored it. He regarded his son a long, long moment. "And the pyromancers?" he said. "Dead. The caches under the September, under the flea-bottom gates, under the Red Keep." Jaime nodded toward the dead men on the floor. "He had them all lit and ready. I took the keys, father. Varys helped. He showed me where the jars were stored. I killed the last of them myself. Trust the eunuch to know where the realm's hidden fires lay." Tywin marked that, stored it away. "Did any of the wildfire catch?" Tywin asked. Jaime shook his head once. "Not beyond that brazier. There was a spill, but the stone wouldn't take it. The city is safe. Safe. For the moment." Tywin knelt, the motion slow, dignified, with none of the awkward patter of a man and used to bending the knee. He took the fallen crown from the step, wiped a smear of blood from one of the points with his thumb, and weighed it in his hand. Gold and garnet, heavy as a promise or a curse. Behind him, his bannermen stood waiting, thousands of Lannister men-at-arms outside the gates, their lion banners snapping above the walls. The city had opened its gates to him with frightened eagerness. Former friends had rushed to greet their old hand, hoping the past might be called back as easily as a lost hound. He looked at his son again. Jaime's white cloak hung crookedly from one shoulder, stained a darker color in the torchlight, as if someone had poured old wine over it. "You sat the throne?" Tywin asked, his voice mild. Jaime flinched just barely. "For a moment. Someone had to until you arrived." Tywin glanced at the throne. That ugly, impressive monstrosity of swords and ambition. Shadows curled like smoke among its blades. "It does not suit you," he said. "Nor does the king's blood on your cloak." Jaime's jaw clenched. "He would have burned them all. Men, women, children. You should thank me, father. I will consider whether thanks is appropriate once the realm is secured." Tywin rose, fingers closing around the crown with clear decision. "For now, go find Lord Varys. I will need a full accounting of the city, the gates, the granaries, the fleet at anchor, if it has not fled with Stannis. And send word to Ser Barristan if he still lives." "And the king?" Jaime asked. His eyes flicked to the corpse. Tywin glanced down at Aerys one last time. The mouth hung open, lips drawn back from rotten teeth. There had been a time when that face commanded fear across 7 kingdoms. Now it was just another dead man. "Take him to the Sept," Tywin said. "Wash him, wrap him. Whatever rites are due a king, let them be performed. He shall have a pyre outside the city walls when matters permit." He paused. "And send for the queen's children, at once." Jaime hesitated. "Gregor and the others are already in the Red Keep, father. They've been searching." Of course they had. Tywin had held his men leashed as the gates opened, but not all leashes were equally tight. There were always those who smelled weakness and wished to gorge on it. Gregor Clegane and Amory Lorch were such men. Useful when turned upon an enemy, dangerous when allowed to gnaw unchecked. Tywin's eyes hardened. "Then I shall remind them whose city this is," he said, "and whose enemies they are permitted to despoil." He descended the steps, stepping deliberately around the king's blood, and strode from the throne room without looking back at the dead man on the floor or the son still standing by the Iron Throne. The echoes of his footfalls chased him down the long hall. He found Gregor Clegane in the royal apartments, battering at a gilded door with a warhammer big as most men. Behind him, Lannister spearmen crowded the corridor, Som. He already burdened with armfuls of silks and jeweled trinkets, the spoils of a kingdom shaken loose. A scrawny boy in stained servant's livery cowered by the wall, one cheek swelling, a trickle of blood at the corner of his mouth where some armored hand had struck him. The mountain turned as Tywin approached, helm under one arm, sweat plastering dark hair to his forehead. "My lord," Gregor rumbled, breathing hard, "the Dornish whore has locked herself in." Tywin did not quicken his step, nor raise his voice. He merely stopped before the door and regarded the gaping split in the carved heartwood where Gregor's hammer had bitten. "The Princess of Dorne," Tywin corrected quietly, "and the Prince and Princess of Dragonstone, the heirs of the realm." Gregor wiped his mouth with the back of one enormous hand and shrugged. "They'll be quieter dead." A hand went to a sword at Tywin's left, a Lannister man-at-arms, bristling at the slight. Tywin stilled him with a sharp look. Then he faced Gregor again. "There will be no killing under this roof without my leave," he said. "Those are my orders. If you cannot remember them, Ser Gregor, it may be your head we mount on the gates, to show the city that law yet holds." Clegane's small eyes narrowed, trying to decide whether this was jest. Tywin did not jest. After a moment, the giant dipped his head. "As you say, my lord." "As I say," Tywin agreed. "You will take 20 men and see the lower corridors secured.
No looting, no rapas, no firas.
Anyone you find breaking that command, strip him of helm and cloak and string him up in the plazas. Red keeps a city better than gold, when shown properly." Gregor's mouth set in something that might have been approval. "As you say," he repeated, then shouldered past his own men, his hammer trailing a thin scrape along the floorstones. Tywin watched him go, then nodded curtly to the men who remained. 2 of them hurried forward to stand at either side of the damaged door, spears ready. "You," Tywin pointed at the bruised boy. "Your name?" "Tomard, lord," the boy whispered. "Tomard, son o' Tom the Tanner, from—" "Never mind that," Tywin cut in. "You knocked on that door?" The boy nodded, swallowing. "I am lord, like the Ser said. I told the princess what you ordered, about bringing em before the throne." "And what did she say?" Tywin asked. "She said she'd not open to any man wearing a lion on his cloak," the boy said. "She said she'd see us all in 7 hells first, beggin' your pardon, lord." A flicker of something, not quite amusement, touched Tywin's mouth. "Wise of her," he murmured. Then louder, he said, "Tell her Lord Tywin stands at her door, alone." The boy glanced at the soldiers, then back at Tywin, as if expecting a trick. But he got to his feet and turned, rapping gently on the splintered wood. "Princess," he called, voice trembling. "The king's hands come himself. Lord Tywin Lannister." Silence from within. Tywin folded his hands behind his back. His patience, like his temper, was a blade others rarely saw, but it existed all the same. At last, a woman's voice, strained but steady. "You were the hand once," Elia Martell called from the other side. "He cast you aside. Or have you forgotten?" "I forget nothing, your grace," Tywin replied, "least of all my duty to the realm. I have not come for your blood." "Lannisters do not come for anything else," Elia answered. "We know your work in Dorne." It was an old wound she prodded at. The memory of burning castles and broken princes when young Tywin had taught the southern lords the price of defiance. He let the words slide past like arrows against plate. "The city stands because I am here," he said crisply. "It will remain standing if its lawful heirs are presented to the realm. Open this door. Or shall I summon a septon and a maester to bear witness and break it down, so that all 7 kingdoms may hear how Elia Martell barred the way to her son's crown?" There was no reply, and for a heartbeat he thought she might defy him still. Then came the scrape of a bolt drawn back. The door opened a handspan. An eye of deep dark brown studied him warily. "Alone?" she demanded. He turned his head pointedly. The spearmen stepped back, lowering their spears and withdrawing down the corridor. Tywin remained where he was. The boy Tomard, seeing no other choice, scuttled away as well. The door opened wider. Elia Martell had always been slight and delicate, but months of fear and confinement had thinned her further. Gray bruises pooled beneath her eyes. Her black hair, once glossy, hung lank around her narrow face. But her chin was still held high, and despite the tremor in her hands, she did not step backward as he entered. Behind her, the queen's chambers were a wreck. Tapestries torn aside to reveal potential hiding places. Chests half-emptied, a cradle overturned. A pair of small shoes lay forgotten near the hearth. Rhaenys stood halfway between cradle and bed, clutching a doll in one grubby hand and sucking the thumb of the other. At the sight of Tywin, she shrank back, wide eyes going from him to her mother. A wet, hiccuping cry came from the bed itself. Aegon Targaryen, heir of the dragon, flailed on the rumpled coverlets, face screwed up, fists clenched red. Elia moved at once to gather him up, positioning herself so that her thin body was between Tywin and the infant. "You have what you wanted," she said, voice low. "My husband's dead. His father's dead, I hear. Is that enough? Or must the lions have the cubs as well?" Tywin looked from her to the children. Rhaenys had Rhaegar's eyes, dark and deep and sad. The boy bore his Targaryen heritage more plainly. The shadow of paler hair, the trace of the dragon in his sharp little features. Blood of the dragon, blood of Dorne, blood of the man who had stolen Lyanna. Stark and set the kingdoms to war. "There was a time," Tywin said evenly, "when I wished my daughter to marry your husband, to be queen beside him. He chose otherwise." Elia's jaw tightened, as if he had slapped her. "You wish to trade a daughter for a crown. We all know the price at which you sell your blood. Better that price than the one your prince set," Tywin retorted. "His choices are ashes now. The realm has no use for ashes." "And what does it have use for?" she demanded. "For a regent with a lion's head and a king's ambition? It would be so easy," he thought, to nod. "To have Gregor and Amory kick down this door and paint the walls with dragon and sunblood both. Robert Baratheon would be pleased. The northern wolf would growl, but he would accept the heads in exchange for his friend's crown. The realm would not cry over 2 more dead Targaryens. It would also mean another turn of the wheel. Another usurper on a throne not his own. Half the realm questioning, the other half waiting for an excuse to throw their swords behind some bright pretender. The Baratheon boy would drink himself to death in a decade. The debts would mount. The wolves and krakens would start eyeing each other's throats again. Tywin Lannister believed in gold and power and legacy, and he believed most of all in things that lasted. A dynasty torn up by the roots every 30 years was not one of those things. "No," he said. The realm requires peace. It requires order, law, and an unbroken line. Your son is the lawful heir of Rhaegar Targaryen, who was heir to Aerys before him. The law is clear. Elia stared at him, as if he had started speaking Valyrian. Aegon whimpered against her shoulder, hands pawing at her necklace. You expect me to believe you will spare them, she whispered. After what your banners have done outside these walls. After what you did to my people. I expect nothing of you, your grace, Tywin said. Belief or disbelief will not alter what I intend. This war was made to end the madness of a king, not the line of the dragons. Aerys is dead. Rhaegar died on the trident. The war is over. What remains is to settle the crown on a head that can bear it. A baby's head, Elia spat. A boy too young to hold up the weight of that thing. She jerked her chin toward the window, toward the distant silhouette of the Iron Throne. A baby does not rule, Tywin replied. He reigns. Others rule in his name until he is grown. And those others would be... You? Elia said with bitter clarity. The hand of the king again. The real king behind the boy. Regent, Tywin said. Until such time as his grace comes of age. The title matters little. The work is the same. And the rebels? She demanded. Robert Baratheon will not kneel to a babe with my eyes. Robert Baratheon has bled for a righteous cause, Tywin said. He will be reminded that his cause was to depose a madman, not to end a family. Jon Arryn is no fool. Eddard Stark is stubborn, but he knows justice when he sees it. They will counsel reason. And if they don't listen, she said, if they demand my children's heads as their price for peace, Tywin met her gaze. Then we will see whether they are prepared to butcher babes and call it honor, he said. But we will not offer such a price first. Not in my name. She closed her eyes. Rhaenys made a tiny sound, not quite words, as she pressed close to her mother's side. You expect to use my children as your shield, Elia said tiredly. You expect to stand behind their little bodies and demand the realm bow. And when it goes wrong, when Robert comes with his hammer and smashes through, they'll be the first crushed. Or they will be the first to be crowned, Tywin said. You may despise me, princess, but you understand. There are no gentle choices left. Only those that leave something standing. She sank down onto the bed, clutching Aegon. He fussed, little fists batting at the air. At length, her shoulders sagged. If you betray them, she began. I do not betray those I rule for, Tywin interrupted, or those who serve me faithfully. Your bannermen in Duskendale would disagree, Elia muttered. They attempted treason, Tywin replied. They paid for it. Something flashed in her eyes. And what do you call what you do now? Turning on a king you once served. I serve the realm, he said, not the madness of one man. She laughed once, harshly. Very well, Lord Tywin. Do as you say. Crown him. Make your peace with the usurper if you can. But hear me. The day you turn that lion's gaze on my son and see only a tool, the day you decide he is a better corpse than a king, I will know. Dorne will know. And we will not sleep until your lions choke on sand and blood. You will be safer at Sunspear than here, Tywin said. Once matters are settled, you may choose where you wish to raise your children. For now, they must be seen. The realm must have a face to bow to, and that face is his. He nodded toward the boy. Aegon had curled his fist around one dark lock of his mother's hair, tugging with oblivious insistence. Elia looked down at her son. Something changed in her expression then, a softening that had nothing to do with politics or revenge. Very well, she whispered. Bring your crown. When Tywin left the room, the Lannister spearmen straightened at once. He gestured, and one hurried away toward the throne room, another toward the courtyard where Pycelle and Varys would be wringing their hands and whispering counsel. He gave no orders about the doors. He had seen the look in Elia's eyes. She would bar them herself if she could. He walked alone for a while, the red keep wrapping around him like a half-remembered garment. Here he had risen. Here he had been humbled. Now he would see it remade in his image, if it cost him the last years of his life. The city still roared beyond the walls, the distant tremor of thousands of voices, some shouting, some weeping, some just glad to be alive. The lion had entered the dragon's den, and the dragon lay dead. The question now was what the stags and wolves would make of it. In the courtyard below, as he crossed a balcony on his way back to the throne room, Tywin saw ravens being loosed from the rookery. Black shapes burst into the sunset sky, wings bearing messages north, east, and south. One of those messages, written in his own precise hand, would soon be in the grip of Jon Arryn. The host of the rebels lay encamped near the trident when the raven came, wings ragged from haste, eyes bright. The maester of the Aerys took the scroll to Lord Jon at once. Robert Baratheon sat under the spreading limbs of an old elm, his wounded legs stretched before him, a goblet of wine in one massive hand. The bandages on his ribs itched. He scratched at them through his tunic, scowling when his fingers came away damp. The maester clucked, then fell silent when Jon raised a hand for quiet. "What is it?" Robert demanded. "News from the city? Has the lion decided which side his claws will rake?" Jon Arryn's gray brows drew together as he read. Eddard Stark, standing nearby with arms folded, watched his foster father's face carefully. At last Jon looked up. "The Mad King is dead," he said. The words fell like stones into a well. Men nearby stopped sharpening their swords. Dice clattered forgotten from a squire's hand. "Dead." Robert's fingers tightened around the stem of the goblet. "Who killed him? Stannis? Did he take the city already?" "Jaime Lannister," Jon said quietly. "The king's own sworn sword." A murmur ran through the lords. Ned felt his jaw set. He remembered the boy who had ridden south with his father, all golden arrogance and easy laughter, too young by half to wear white. A Kingsguard who put sword to his king was an oathbreaker's worst image. "Tywin," Robert demanded. "What of him? Has he thrown open the gates to us?" Jon scanned the rest of the letter, his mouth flattened. "He entered the city under the pretense of aid," he said. "His forces now hold the Red Keep. He reports that he has prevented the king's last command, something about wildfire, it seems, from being carried out. He claims to have secured the queen's children." Robert's face darkened. "Secured?" he repeated. "A Lannister word if ever I heard one. Did he send their heads to me, then, wrapped up with lion silk and compliments?" "No," Jon said. "He writes that he intends the Prince Aegon to be acknowledged as king." The air went cold. Even with summer sun on his shoulders, Ned felt as though someone had poured icy water down his spine. "Aegon," Ned said slowly, "Rhaegar's son. A babe with a closer blood claim than any of us," Jon said. "Though the crown might be said to pass to Viserys, or the babe on Dragonstone, were we to follow the male line strictly. There will be arguments in Old Town for a generation." His eyes went back to the page. "But Lord Tywin proposes that the boy be crowned King Aegon VI, with himself as regent until the child comes of age." Robert laughed. It was not a pleasant sound. "He proposes, does he? How generous of him. To offer the throne to a babe who cannot even shit without a nurse to wipe him." Jon's gaze was steady. "He asks that the rebels attend a council in the capital to witness the coronation and settle the terms of a general peace. Full pardons, confirmations of titles, the usual. He offers recompense for damages done in the war, paid, one must assume, from Lannister mines." "And what does he offer me?" Robert said. "I who smashed Rhaegar on the trident. I who bled from Summerhall to stony September for this realm. What does his lordship of Casterly Rock think I will sell my victory for?" Jon folded the letter calmly. "He notes," he said, "that prior to the war, Lord Tywin had sought marriage between your house and his through the Lady Cersei. He hints that such an alliance may still be advantageous, especially with a boy king who will require strong guardians around him." Ned said nothing. The noise of the camp seemed far away. The lowing of oxen, the clatter of pots, the distant ring of a hammer on steel as armor was repaired. So, Robert said softly, he would have me stand beside his lion-protected whelp and smile, crown on a dragon baby's head, my hand on a Lannister tit, and I am to be content after all he has done. What he has done, Jon said, is keep the city from burning. If the wildfire stories are true, he has saved tens of thousands of lives. And left the dragon spawn alive, Robert growled. He flung the goblet aside. It bounced off a rock and spilled red into the grass. All my life, they have had my father's chair. Their madness killed my brother. Rhaegar stole Lyanna and his voice broke raw. Ned looked away at once. He could not bear the sight of his friend's pain, and could not escape it either. Lyanna's laugh echoed in his head, bright and fierce. She would have given him such a tongue-lashing. Could she see him now, swollen with rage and grief, talking of chairs and crowns as if they mattered? Robert, Jon said gently, our war was to remove Aerys, not to exterminate an entire house. We swore vows to protect the realm from madness. The man whose madness began this sits now in his own blood. Vengeance beyond that may show poorly to history. History can bugger itself with a weirwood branch, Robert snarled. What of justice? What of all the men who died at Summerhall, at Ashford, at the Bells? What of Lyanna? Ned stepped forward. Justice, he said quietly, does not always look like a sword in a throat. Robert rounded on him. Listen to the wolf preach mercy, he sneered. Where was mercy when Brandon and father died? When Aerys Andied your head next? I killed Rhaegar for what he did. Now Tywin would ask me to forgive his get, to bow to a child of that union? You would have me call that justice. I would have you consider the realm, Ned said. If the boy lives and is crowned with the consent of the lords, there will be peace. Dorne will yield. The Reach will sigh and count its losses and move on. Your banners can go home. Mine can go home. We can bury our dead and see to our wounded. We can mourn Lyanna in the quiet of our own halls. And if I refuse, Robert demanded, then we march on King's Landing, Jon Arryn said. His voice was calm, the way ice is calm as it cracks. We fight the lion host and whatever remains of the royalists. We take the city by storm. There will be fire and rape and murder, however tightly we wrap the leashes on our own men. The small folk will pay again, and if we prevail, we will have only done what Tywin has already done. Taken the city and killed the king. But with one great difference, Robert said. The difference that it will be my banner flying from those walls, my crown on my head, not the whelps. Jon's eyes did not waver. You have my love as a son, he said, but you are not the lawful heir to this throne. You are cousin to it through Aerys, true. Yet there are at least 3 Targaryens closer in blood, if we count Viserys, and for if the babe at Dragonstone lives. To place you on the throne will be to admit that conquest is law. Every great lord will see it and know that if once might makes right, it may do so again. Robert's lip curled. I beat Rhaegar, he said. Is that not enough might? For today, Jon said. But dragons live 60 years and more. Your sons will quarrel with your brothers sons will quarrel with your cousins. The precedent will lie there, waiting for any strong sword to pick it up. Is that peace? Robert turned away, pacing as much as his injuries allowed. The elm's shadow striped his face. His hand flexed empty, as if longing for the weight of his hammer. You would kneel, he said without looking at them. You two who raised banners when I did, who rode south to bring down the dragon. You would bend the knee to Rhaegar's son. I would bend my knee to keep my people safe, Jon said simply. So would I, Ned said after a beat. His words tasted like ash, but he made himself meet Robert's eyes when the other man turned. You know me, Robert. You know I do not speak lightly. If I thought the boy's death was needed, I would take the sword myself. But we have what we wanted. Aerys is gone. The man who burned your kin and mine is food for carrion. There is no honor in killing a child for his father's sin. He is not just a child, Robert muttered. He is the dragon's spawn. He is also the lawful king, Jon reminded him. If we crown him with our consent, we bind him to us. Tywin Lannister is many things, but he is not a fool. He knows it will take more than lions alone to rule. Robert looked between them. The maester hovered, wringing his hands. The gathered lords, Baratheon, Aerys, Stark, Tully, their bannermen and sworn swords, waited like hounds watching for their master's whistle. Tywin offers Cersei, Robert said at last. He thinks me a dog to be kept quiet with a bitch. Lady Cersei is beautiful, Ned said carefully. She will give you strong sons. Robert barked an incredulous laugh. You think I care what she looks like, Ned? I would have given a kingdom to see Lyanna in my bed. Ned looked at the ground. Lyanna was far away, in a lonely tower in Dorne, bleeding her life out, if his fears were true. The thought of her in any man's bed, Robert's, Rhaegar's, any, was a knife. If Lyanna yet lives, we will find her, Jon said. If she is dead, his voice gentled, then no crown, no marriage will bring her back. But her memory may sit easier in a realm at peace than in one still burning. Robert's shoulders slumped. You two will do this, he said. It was not a question. I will attend the council, Jon said, and I will argue that the terms be just. If they are not, I will walk away. And you, Ned? Robert asked. Will you stand beside me, or beside the dragon? I will stand beside the realm, Ned answered. If that means bending my knee to a child, I will do it. If that child grows into a tyrant like his grandsire, I will be the first to draw steel. Robert stared at him for a long moment. Then he looked up at the fluttering tents, the banners of storm and wolf and trout and falcon, all those colors that had marched behind him. 7 hells, he muttered. I never wanted a crown. I only wanted Lyanna. I know, Ned said quietly. Robert grunted, as if something inside him hurt. Fine, he said. We will go to King's Landing and hear the lion's proposals. I make no promises beyond that. If I am to kneel, he will have to pay dearly for the sight. Jon Arryn unfolded the letter again. The lines of worry in his face did not ease, but there was a new, hard light in his eyes now. He had taken boys into his care before and made them men. Perhaps, Ned thought, he believed he was doing the same for a kingdom. In that case, Jon said, we had best prepare our words as carefully as our swords. In King's Landing, Lord Tywin Lannister prepared his own. The throne room had been cleaned hastily. Aerys' blood was gone, though if one knew where to look, faint brown shadows showed between the stones. The crown sat on a velvet cushion. A golden lion banner hung beside the dragon, equal in size, their cloth rippling in some small draught. Elia stood beside the small, high-backed seat placed on the dais, Aegon in her arms. The boy squirmed restlessly, tugging at the fine collar of the little crimson doublet the maidservants had stitched overnight. Rhaenys clung to her mother's skirts, eyes big as plates as she lay, okayed out over the sea of mailed backs and gleaming helms. The great lords of the realm had answered the call, those within reach at least. Mace Tyrell of the Reach, his fine clothes straining over his belly. Paxter Redwine, Randall Tarly, lean and dangerous. Old Lord Hoster Tully, pale from the marches he had undertaken. Lannister bannermen in their gold and crimson. A smattering of Crownland's lords who had bent with the wind more than once already. Even Lewin Martell of the Kingsguard, Elia's uncle, his face carved from grief and stubborn pride. At the far end of the hall, the great doors opened. Robert Baratheon limped in at the head of the rebel delegation, his antlered helm under his arm. Beside him walked Jon Arryn, spare and dignified, his Arryn falcon mantle newly brushed. Eddard Stark came at their shoulder, grim and tired. Behind them, Lord Hoster, Lord Stannis of Dragonstone, young Edmure, Brynden Blackfish, and other names that had turned the trident red. Every eye followed them as they advanced. Robert's gaze swept up the hall, took in the dragon and lion banners, the boy on his mother's hip, the man in Lannister crimson standing just below the throne. Tywin met his eyes and inclined his head the barest fraction. Robert's jaw worked. He did not return the courtesy. They stopped halfway up the hall at the appointed line. The distance between them and the throne was not so great, but it felt like a chasm. "Lord Tywin," Jon Arryn said. His voice carried clearly. "We come at your invitation." "I am honored you answered," Tywin replied. "The realm owes you a debt for your valor." "The realm owes my brother a grave," Robert muttered, but not loudly enough for all to hear. Tywin pretended not to. "Much has been lost," he said, projecting his words for the hall. "Our king lies dead. His heir died in battle. That alone would be enough to plunge the realm into chaos, even without the madness that preceded it. But the line is not broken. The blood of the dragon survives." He gestured. Elia stepped forward, lifting Aegon so that he could be seen clearly. The boy, startled by the noise and lights and the sheer size of the hall, had stopped fidgeting. His violet eyes, so bright against his pale skin, widened as he stared out at the forest of faces. "Behold Aegon Targaryen," Tywin said, "son of Rhaegar, son of Aerys, by law and blood. He is the rightful king of the Undulls, the Rhoynar, and the First Men." Tension ran through the hall. Some of the royalist lords bowed their heads. Others looked to Robert, to Jon Arryn, to see how they would react. Robert said nothing. His face was unreadable. Ned watched him, wished he knew what storm brewed in that broad chest. "Aerys paid for his crimes," Tywin went on. "He died by his own sworn sword when he would have burned the city and all in it. Many here have their own anger, their own losses. No decree will erase those, but we stand now at a crossroads. If we fight on, we will right our anger in more blood. Or we may set it aside for a time, to give this boy a chance to be better than the men who came before him." He turned again to the gathered lords.
Y propose 10.
Aegon Targaryen to be crowned king, with the consent of this council. Elia Martell to swear for him as regent in name, and I, Tywin Lannister, to serve as Lord Regent and protector of the realm until his grace comes of age. The great lords here assembled to swear fealty anew, under such terms of restitution as we may agree. The debts of the crown to be honored, and new arrangements made for their payment. Amnesties to be granted. No man here need fear the retribution of the dragon for having drawn sword against Aerys. "You ask much," Randall Tarly murmured from the western flank. "I ask what the realm requires," Tywin answered without looking at him. "And what of me?" Robert called. He strode one step forward, hand falling to the empty place where his hammer would have hung. His eyes were locked on Aegon, and there was something in his expression that made Ned's heart hitch, a mingling of hatred and something like awe. He had never seen a child of the king's before, Ned realized. Rhaegar had been a man when Robert faced him on the river. This boy wore the same blood in an untested body. "You speak of amnesties," Robert said loudly. "You speak of debts and oaths. But I was the one who killed Rhaegar. His blood is on my hammer. I raised the banners of rebellion. If there is a price to be paid for peace, it must be paid first by me. So tell me, Lord Tywin, hand of this and that. What do you ask of the man who led the war?" Tywin let the question hang a moment for effect. Then he inclined his head, the movement stiff but unyielding. "I ask of you, Lord Robert," he said, "the same thing I ask of every man here, your oath, your sword, your counsel. The realm has need of your strength in days to come, not pitted against its king, but in his service." There was a ripple of surprise, even a few short laughs. Robert's eyes narrowed, suspicious. "You would have me guard the boy," he said, "wear his colors as if I were one of his lickspittles at court? I would have you acknowledged as Lord Paramount of the Stormlands, Warden of the East and South, and Commander of the King's armies," Tywin answered. "No man living knows battle as you do. Let your storm break not upon this hall, but upon those who would threaten us from beyond our shores. The Ironborn yet test their chains. The free cities watch us now with greedy eyes. Help me make this peace ours, not theirs. Robert's mouth compressed. He looked at Jon Arryn, then at Ned. The hall held its breath. "And for this," he said slowly, "you offer me a wife." A murmur swept through the crowd. Tywin did not smile. He rarely did, but something colder, more calculated, moved behind his eyes. "Before this war began," he said, "I offered my daughter's hand to House Baratheon. That offer stands. Lady Cersei is of age, comely, and of good breeding. She will give you sons to inherit your lands and titles." "She will not be queen," Robert said. "Her sons will not sit that throne." "Not unless fate decrees otherwise," Tywin said. "But they will stand almost as high, married into the royal household, bound by blood and alliance. The lions of Casterly Rock do not marry lightly." It was bait, thrown with precision. Robert had grown up in the Stormlands, listening to stories of Targaryen glories from a distance. To offer him instead a queen's daughter and half a king's power was to set two cravings against each other: vengeance and pride. Tywin watched, weighing which was heavier. Ned looked at Elia, clutching Aegon, and thought of Lyanna in her bed of blood. How many lives balanced on the turn of this man's mood? "You will kneel to the boy?" Robert demanded of Jon Arryn quietly. The hall's murmur thinned as men strained to hear. "If he is crowned by right, with the seven watching, I will," Jon said. "And you, Ned?" Robert said. Ned felt every eye on him. He thought of his father's bones unburied, of Brandon's wild eyes when the noose tightened around his neck, of the scented smoke in the throne room when Aerys had demanded his head. He thought of Lyanna whispering, "Promise me," in his memory's echo, though he had not yet heard those words from her true lips. "I will," he said, "if he is just and if the Regent rules justly in his stead until he comes of age. If he is not, I will remember the other oath I owe you, Robert, to stand against tyranny." Tywin's brows lifted a fraction. "I will hold you to that, Lord Stark," he said, "and welcome your counsel, when it stays a hand that would strike too soon." Robert's chuckle rasped like stones grinding. "You may live to regret that," he said. "When Ned starts lecturing you about honor, no man is safe." The hall laughed, too loudly, eager for some easing of the tension. Elaya's grip on Aegon relaxed a hair. Robert looked at the boy again. Aegon stared back with solemn curiosity, one hand clutching his mother's necklace. "You are your father's son," Robert said under his breath. "Better pray you are not too much like him." He dropped heavily to one knee. Some men gasped. Others, reacting more to the sight than to their minds, knelt with him. Jon Arryn lowered himself too, spare old bones creaking. Ned's knees struck stone a heartbeat later. The hall became a sea of bent backs and bowed heads. "I, Robert of House Baratheon," he said, voice carrying clearly despite the bitterness in it, "Lord of Storm's End, do pledge my sword, my strength, and my life to Aegon of House Targaryen, sixth of his name, King of the Undulls, the Rhoynar, and the First Men. I swear to defend his crown against every enemy, to obey his lawful commands, and to protect his realm from all threats, until the day I die or he frees me of this oath." Aegon, not understanding, gurgled. Elia pressed a shaking kiss to his hair. "So witnessed, so sworn," Jon Arryn added. "So sworn," Ned echoed. The words were heavy on his tongue. Yet when he looked up, he saw something like hope flicker on the faces of men who had only known war for long seasons now. Tywin nodded once, slow and grave. "Let the heralds record it," he said, "and let the Septon prepare the oil. The realm has its king." They crowned Aegon that afternoon, in the great September of Baelor. The bells rang loud and long, their clamor washing over the city like a wave. Small folk poured into the streets, the memory of fire and famine eclipsed for a few hours by the spectacle of distant ceremony. They cheered when the criers announced that the war was over. They cheered louder still when they heard that pardons would be given and bread handed out from the king's own granaries. In some dark alley, a man stabbed another over a crust of bread. On some high balcony, a lady wrote a letter to her lover in Old Town, telling him that the madness was over and perhaps he might come home. Life, indifferent to crowns and oaths, crept forward. In the September, Aegon fussed when the oil touched his brow. The crown slipped sideways on his fine hair until Elia's trembling hands steadied it. Tywin stood at the boy's right, Jon Arryn at his left, Robert a dark, hulking shape behind them, Cersei Lannister stiff and beautiful among the women of the court. She watched Robert with a gaze that might have carved stone. He did not look her way. Afterward, in the echoing hall of feasts, as men toasted King Aegon and drank to the peace, Ned slipped away to a quiet corner where the rushes muffled the sound. He needed air and thought and something more. He found Jaime Lannister there already, alone, leaning against a pillar. His white cloak had been replaced by a fresh one, spotless. His sword belt was buckled, but his hand did not rest on the hilt. He held a cup, untouched. "You did not kneel," Ned said. Jaime's mouth twisted. "I am sworn to the king," he said. "I had no need." "You were sworn to the last one," Ned pointed out. "That did not stop you putting a sword in his back." Jaime shrugged, his face a mask. "He broke oaths first," he said. "I merely corrected the mistake." Ned's jaw clenched. "You think yourself a hero," he said. "The city saved from fire, the small folk spared." "I did not say that," Jaime said quietly. "But I have to tell myself something to sleep." Ned looked at him sharply. For a moment, the young man's flippancy dropped, and Ned saw the boy beneath. Saw confusion, anger, and something like shame. "Why did you do it?" Ned asked, despite himself. Jaime's green eyes flicked to him. "Why does a man kill a mad dog?" he asked. "Because if he doesn't, the beast will bite him and half the village too." "You were sworn to guard him," Ned said. Jaime's laugh was brittle. "Guard him while he slit throats and burned men alive? The oaths do not say that, Lord Stark." "Some things matter more than vows," Ned said stubbornly. Jaime's smile faded. "Yes," he said, "they do." They stood in silence a moment, listening to the muffled roar of the feast. Laughter rolled like distant thunder. Somewhere, Robert was probably already deep in the casks. Somewhere else, Tywin Lannister was counting his victories. "I will ride to Dorne soon," Ned said. "There are matters there I must attend." Jaime's brows rose. "It's a long road. Take care some Dornishman doesn't stick a spear in your belly. They've lost more than most." Ned nodded. "They have gained something too, if this peace holds." "When has peace ever held?" Jaime said. "Men like my father will see to it that it doesn't sooner or later." Ned studied him. "Do you hate him?" he asked suddenly. Jaime blinked. "My father? No, I understand him." "I do not," Ned said. "I think he walks on other men's hearts and calls it duty." "Perhaps it is," Jaime murmured. "Better one man's heart underfoot than 10,000 men's corpses." "Perhaps." He pushed off the pillar and straightened. "Forgive me, my lord of Winterfell. The wine grows thin here, and the company moralizing." Ned ignored the barb. "Remember your duty," he said, "to the boy on that throne." Jaime's gaze sharpened. "If I did not, my lord, rest assured there would be no shortage of men to remind me. My father, the Queen's brother, the honorable Wolf of the North." His smile flashed, lazy and edged. "I will keep him alive, better than I did his grandsire." He left then, white cloak swaying behind him. Ned watched him go, feeling as if the ground beneath his feet had shifted. There were few things in this new world he could trust. He would have to be one of them himself. He found Jon Arryn shortly after, discussing matters of coin with Stannis Baratheon and a miserly Crownlands lord. They spoke of the cost of repairing burnt towers, of rebuilding the king's fleet, of meat prices in a famine. When Jon saw Ned, he finished his sentence and stepped aside. "You look tired," Jon said. "So do you," Ned replied. Jon's smile was wan. "Old men grow tired more easily. You have other excuses." "I ride south," Ned said without preamble, "to find Lyanna." "Are you certain she yet lives?" Jon asked softly. "No," Ned admitted. "But until I see her body, I will not bury her." Jon touched his shoulder. "Take as many men as you need, but not too many," he advised. "Dorne is raw. Our peace with them is thin as spun glass. If you go with an army, they will see it as provocation." "I will take my own guard, no more," Ned said. "And perhaps the Blackfish, if his knee will hold." Jon hesitated. "You know the new king will be displeased if you steal away without giving him the chance to grant permission." "The new king is drinking milk at his nurse's breast," Ned said quietly. "His regent may frown, but I am not his sworn man yet, not while we speak only of ceremony." "You are already his vassal in truth," Jon said, "whether the words have been said or not. But go, bring back what truth you can. Places in this world where truth still lives are rare." Ned bowed his head. "And you? Will you stay here?" "For a time," Jon said. His eyes went to the dais, where Tywin Lannister sat conferring with Pycelle and Varys. "The lion will need a falcon on his shoulder, to remind him that the wind can shift. Take care he does not pluck your feathers," Ned warned. Jon's smile was thin. "If he tries, he may find my talons sharper than he expects." They clasped forearms. That night, Ned slept fitfully in a borrowed chamber of the Red Keep, dreams full of wolves and lions and a girl's laughter echoing off stone. 2 weeks later, he stood in the dusty courtyard of a lonely tower in the Red Mountains of Dorne, holding his sister's cold hand as she died. "Promise me, Ned," Lyanna whispered. She was pale, her once fierce eyes dulled by fever, but her grip was iron. "Promise me." "I promise," he said hoarsely. He did not ask what. They both knew. The bundle in her arms squirmed weakly, a fresh wail breaking the thick air. Ned took the child when she could no longer hold him. He had the stark look, this boy who had Rhaegar's blood. Dark hair, gray eyes. Only the fine lines of his face, the stubborn set of his jaw, hinted at dragon bone. Ned named him Jon, for the man who had been more a father than his own had had time to be. He wrapped the boy in his cloak, hiding the silken wrappings Lyanna had clung to. When he rode north again, the child in his arms, he wore a mask of grief and a new, heavy secret. King's Landing changed in his absence. The Lion's banners remained, but they no longer snapped triumphant on every tower. The dragon's standard flew highest, the Boy King's sigil, reminding the city for whose sake the peace had been made. Tywin Lannister took the titles he had named: Regent and Protector of the Realm, Hand of the King, Warden of the West. His sigil hung in every hall. His gold paid for new roads, new ships, new granaries. He sat the small council as if he had been born to that chair and had never warmed any other. Elia Martell remained in the capital for 2 years more. She played her part, standing behind her son at feasts, speaking softly in the boy's ear when courtiers knelt. She received ambassadors from Sunspear, her letters from Doran long and full of counsel. Oberyn visited once, the viper in silks and sand-colored mail, eyes alight with fury barely leashed. He and Tywin spoke behind closed doors for hours. When Oberyn left, he did so with a smile that worried Varys more than any open threat. "Enemies who grin are always more dangerous than those who spit," the eunuch murmured to Tyrion on E-Day as they watched the prince's party ride out. Tyrion had been hiding behind a pillar, watching the royal procession with wide, mismatched eyes. He loved the sight of the horses, the glitter of armor, the banners. He loved, perhaps more than was wise, the sight of the little king himself, toddling between his mother's skirts. Aegon liked Tyrion. The boy had once toddled over to him in the small court, catching hold of his sleeve with chubby fingers. "Why your face like that?" the prince had asked, with the unfiltered cruelty of children. Tyrion had smiled. "Because the gods wasted all their care making yours so pretty," he had replied. Aegon had giggled, delighted. Elia had given them both a look that was half reproach, half conspiratorial amusement. Tyrion's father did not share her humor. "The king is not a mummer's toy for you to amuse yourself with," Tywin said quietly that evening, when they dined alone in his private solar. Lannisport lay far away, but the sea breeze that could slip up the Blackwater Bay sometimes found its way through the high windows. Tyrion picked at his food. The roast lamb was excellent, the wine even better, but he had learned how quickly appetite could be extinguished in his father's presence. "I did not harm him," Tyrion said. "He likes me." "He is a king," Tywin said. "He does not like or dislike as other children do. He learns habits. He forms attachments. I will not have him grow accustomed to dwarfs and fools who speak their minds." "Perhaps that is what he needs," Tyrion said lightly. "Men who speak their minds." Tywin's gaze chilled further. "He needs men who will teach him to rule," he said. "Not boys who have never ruled anything more difficult than a wineskin." Tyrion swallowed the retort that sprang to his lips. His father's visits to Casterly Rock had grown fewer since he took up the regency. Tyrion saw more of Kevan now, kindly and tired, and of his brother when Jaime rode west. Cersei had left years ago, her marriage to Robert sealed in a vault of resentment and ambition. He had seen her on her wedding day, a blaze of gold and white. Robert, already thickening at the waist, had swayed slightly as he stood beside her, wine-sodden but handsome. Their children came quickly. A boy with golden hair and a laugh like a barked order. A girl with his mother's eyes. A second boy, quieter, watchful. They visited court often. Tywin saw to that. The Baratheon brood played with the Targaryen boy in the Godswood and the palace corridors, pages and squires chasing after them. From a balcony, Tyrion watched Aegon run with Joffrey and Tommen and Myrcella, watched the way his nurse fretted when he climbed the same rocks as the others. "Careful, your grace," the woman called. "Your grace, you'll scuff your boots." "I'm not glass," Aegon shouted back. "I'm a dragon." He leaped from one low wall to the next, fast and sure-footed. Robert, watching from a distance with a cup in hand, grunted approval. "He's got some of Rhaegar's blood," Robert said grudgingly. "Better hope he didn't get all of it." "He's my son too," Elia said sharply. "Remember that when you speak." Robert grunted again, less approving. He and Elia had a wary courtesy between them, born of necessity rather than affection. He had promised at the council that first day that he would never raise his hand against her or her children so long as the peace held. She had answered with a Martell phrasing that meant she would never raise a sword against his. Unless Tyrion listened. He always listened. A dwarf who did not gather words like coins was a fool. He heard, too, the whispers that drifted through the court. That the king grew more like his regent every year. That Tywin Lannisters will carry more weight than any edict sealed with wax and dragon. That Robert drank too much, laughed too loudly, and spent too little time at his own seat of power. Ned Stark went north as promised, taking his Tully bride with him and his bastard son. The boy grew up in the shadow of Winterfell's great gray walls, unaware of the weight of blood in his veins. The story told that Ned returned from the war with a northern wench's child, was ugly enough to satisfy the prurient and familiar enough to deflect deeper questions. Catelyn Tully's resentment banked high, but she accepted what she was given, for a time. Jon Snow learned the blade from Ser Roderick, rode through snowstorms, and looked south sometimes with a restlessness he did not understand. Years slipped. The scars of war faded, if not entirely. Tywin's regency was marked by iron order. Banditry on the roads fell. Tax collectors grew less corrupt, if only because the corrupt ones died. The King's Landing gold cloaks became a Real Guard rather than a gang of sanctioned thugs. The royal fleet, under Stannis' harsh command, multiplied. Coasts that had once been easy prey for Greyjoy raids now bristled with watchtowers and beacons. Men muttered about the cost. Tywin raised levies and expected them paid. He contracted loans with prudent caution. From the Iron Bank of Bravos and from the richer guilds of Lannisport and Oldtown. He set novice Maester Gorman to drawing ledgers so fine they might have shamed a Bravosi counting house. Tywin did not care if men loved him. He cared that the sums balanced and that the roads were safe for his tax wagons. Aegon grew in the shadow of all that. He was not a cruel child. He liked hawking and reading and listening to Barristan Selmy tell tales of knights long dead. He rode often with Jon Connington, the exiled lord of Griffin's Roost whom Tywin had recalled and carefully rehabilitated as a commander, harnessing his fierce loyalty to the memory of Rhaegar into something useful. Elia watched her son with a mother's worry and a princess's calculation. She saw the way Tywin spoke to him more as if to an apprentice than to a child. She saw, too, the way Aegon tried to square his grandfather's hard counsel with the gentler lessons she and Luwin and the Septons gave. Justice is like a sword, Tywin told the boy one day. In the solar where maps covered walls and a fire burned even in summer, Tyrion, perched on a low stool, pretended to read a volume of history while listening avidly. How? Aegon asked. His small hands were ink-stained. He'd been copying letters before the lesson shifted. It must be applied with force and precision, Tywin said, not waved about to impress onlookers. You do not show mercy to men who defy the peace, your grace. You take their heads and show them on spikes at the gate. Their sons will think twice before following. And what if they stole because they were hungry? Aegon asked. Mother says the harvest in the Crownlands was poor last year. If a man takes bread to feed his children, must I take his head? You may take his hand instead, Tywin said flatly, and see that the granaries are properly stocked next time, so that the need does not arise. It is not for common men to decide how the realm stores are spent. Tyrion hid a wince. Aegon's brow furrowed. This did not sit well with him. Tyrion could see that, but he nodded slowly, absorbing the lesson. What would you do, uncle? Aegon asked, surprising him by turning. If you were king and a man stole bread because his children were hungry, what would you do? Tywin's gaze flicked to Tyrion, cold warning in it. This was not the dwarf's place. Tyrion met his eyes and looked away, not out of obedience, but because he had no wish to be sent from the room. If I were king, he said slowly, I would ask why the children were hungry. If the answer were that my men had taken too much grain already, I'd have the steward whipped. If the answer were that their father spent his coin on dice and drink, I'd have him whipped, or perhaps set to work where he could earn honest bread. The cutting of hands is a waste. A man with one hand can still steal, but he can no longer wield a hoe or a sword. Aegon brightened. That makes sense, he said. Grandfather, a king cannot whip every steward himself. Tywin cut across him. Nor can he hear every plea. He must make laws that can be applied without his constant presence. If every sentence depends on his mood, there is no law, only whim. That was your grandsire's way. We all remember the price of it. He looked at Tyrion again. Your uncle is clever, Tywin said. But cleverness is cheap, your grace. Wisdom is rarer. Wisdom knows when mercy serves the realm and when it harms it. The boy subsided. The moment, fragile, passed. Later, in his own chambers, Tyrion poured himself a goblet of wine and sat staring at the fire. Varys slid in like a shadow the way he did. You play a dangerous game, my lord, the eunuch said. Tyrion snorted. Everything is a dangerous game in this court. True, Varys murmured, but few hearts are as important as the boys. Whoever fills it with their lessons now will shape the realm for decades. And you? Tyrion asked. Which songs do you whisper in his ear? Varys smiled blandly. Only lullabies, he said. It is tiring being the realm's nurse. One must keep so many babes from burning themselves. Tyrion thought of Wildfire, of 8-year-old Aegon reaching toward a candle without fear. If he grows to be like his grandsire, I will drown myself in that green muck, he said. Varys's eyes glinted. If he grows to be like his grandsire, he said softly, I do not think you will have time to reach the river. You sound almost hopeful, Tyrion observed. I am always hopeful, Varys said lightly. Hope is useful. It keeps men working when fear would make them hide. Whom do you hope for? Tyrion pressed. The boy? My father? Yourself. Varys's smile widened. I hope for the realm. The realm? Tyrion repeated, rolling the word in his mouth. We have so many people hoping for it. Pity it has no teeth to bite them when their hopes lead to folly. Summer turned eventually to another fall. 10 years into Tywin's regency, the South knew something like peace. There were quarrels, of course. Border disputes, inheritance squabbles, the occasional riot over bread or tax. But there was no open war. The Reach sent its harvests, the Westerlands its gold, the North its furs and fish. Only Dorne remained somewhat apart, prickly and proud, its prince rarely coming to court, his letters always carefully, pointedly formal. On the Iron Islands, Balon Greyjoy watched the coasts bristle with new-built towers and gnashed his teeth. He would rise sooner or later. Tyrion could smell it in the wind. Tywin, never careless, saw it too and arranged for extra levies in the west. In the north, Ned Stark raised his children on stories of honor and of the promises men made and broke. Robb, Bran, Sansa, Arya, Rickon, and Jon, bastard at their table, snow among their number, grew tall and wild and strong. Catelyn watched the bastard with resentful eyes, but she loved her trueborns fiercely. Jon took that at least as comfort. When he was 14, Ned took Jon aside one morning in the Godswood. You look south often, Ned said. Jon blinked. Sometimes, he admitted. I wonder what it looks like. The court, the king. The king is a boy 2 years your junior, Ned said, with the weight of 7 kingdoms on his shoulders and the lion's paw pressing down in the name of guidance. Jon frowned. Do you trust him? The boy, Ned considered. I met him once when he was crowned. He cried when they put the crown on his head. I thought that a good sign. As for what he has become, I heard that he spared a group of bandits from the noose last year and sent them to the wall instead. Is that mercy or cowardice? Jon asked. Perhaps wisdom, Ned said. We always need men at the wall. Jon looked at him sharply. Would you have me go there? He asked. There was longing in his voice. The wall was far, far from the south and its secrets, far from Catelyn's cold gaze. Ned hesitated. He thought of Lyanna, of the promise, of the danger of Robert's temper in a realm where Targaryen blood still sat the throne. I would have you choose your own road, Ned said. But know this, if you ride south, take care whose eyes you meet. There are men who would see your face and recall another's. I wish not to test their memories. Jon nodded slowly. He did not understand, not fully, but he saw the care in his father's eyes and took that as a torch for the darkness ahead. In King's Landing, gradually, the question of succession crept from whisper to open conversation. When will the king be of age? Mace Tyrell asked at a feast, his flushed face oiled with wine and fat. The boy is near 16, is he not? Old enough for a bride, old enough for a sword, old enough for a firm hand on the reins. Tywin, at his right, sipped his wine. The law names 16 as the age of majority, he said. By that reckoning, His Grace is near ready to assume full royal powers. And will you let him? Oberyn Martell asked slyly from further down the table, this time having come for a rare visit with a cluster of spearmen in red and gold behind him. Or do you prefer the feel of the throne's shadow on your back too much to give it up? The hall quieted. Aegon himself sat at the high seat, listening. His face was smooth, his eyes alert. He wore a black doublet with red embroidery, his hair tied back with a strip of crimson silk. He looked older than his years sometimes, when the candlelight hit him just so. My duty as regent is to train my king until he may rule, Tywin said, giving Oberyn a look like a knife's edge. It is not to cling to power past its proper time. When His Grace is ready, he will take full charge of the realm's business. Until then, I will continue to lend him my experience. And how does one know when a king is ready? Aegon asked calmly. All eyes moved to him. Tywin studied him. When he can hear counsel without being ruled by it, he said. When he can decide a matter of law without flinching from the consequences. When he can send men to their deaths without lying awake all night and without growing too fond of that power. Aegon's jaw tightened. So you would have me neither weak nor cruel. I would have you respected and obeyed, Tywin said. And loved, Elia asked softly. Her hands rested on the table, fingers adorned with rings that shone under the chandeliers. Love is a fickle coin, Tywin said. Spend it if you have it. Do not depend on it. Fear, however, can be counted on. Fear breeds rebellion, Oberyn drawled. You have only to look at Dragonstone to see that. Or have you forgotten? I have forgotten nothing, Tywin replied. Aegon intervened. Uncle Oberyn, Lord Tywin, he said. This was to be a feast. Let us not turn it into council. Oberyn bowed with mocking grace. Tywin inclined his head minimally. The tension eased, but did not vanish. Later that night, in the quiet of his chambers, Aegon confronted Elia. Mother, he said, do you trust Lord Tywin? Elia looked up from the letter she was writing, candlelight painting shadows in the hollows of her cheeks. Trust? She repeated. In what? In that he will surrender power when I am of age, Aegon said. In that he will not keep his hands on everything, even after I sit the council alone. Elia set her quill aside. He loves power, she said. It is the only thing I am certain he loves. Perhaps his house in his way. Perhaps the legacy of Lannister. But power most of all. And me? Aegon prompted. You are his work, Elia said. His greatest task. He has poured 10 years of his time into shaping you. He will not abandon that before he is certain you will not undo it in a year. Our task, my son, is to show him that you can rule without breaking what he has built, and to show you that what he has built does not belong only to him. I feel sometimes like a sword pressed between two whetstones, Aegon said. Grandfather on one side, you and Uncle Oberyn and Ser Luwin on the other. They grind, and I am afraid that when they are done, there will be nothing left but filings. Elia smiled sadly. A sword is made stronger by the hammer and the stone, she said. But you are not only a sword. Remember Rhaegar's songs. Remember that a king is not only law and justice and punishment. He is also mercy, music, and memory. I scarcely remember father, Aegon said. I have only others' words. Yours, John Cunnington's.
Se Barristan's.
Lord Robert scowls. Then remember them all, Elia said. Take from each the parts that make sense. Discard the parts that reek of madness. Build yourself out of pieces that fit. And when the time comes, step out of the lion's shadow. She did not add, before the shadow crushes you. She did not need to. Aegon heard it in her voice. When word came, months later, that Balon Greyjoy had raised his Kraken banners and declared himself king of the Isles and the North, the realm shook. They try this every generation, Tywin said at the council table. The map of Westeros lay before them, a great painted thing with little carved sigils placed on rivers and coasts. Bombastic declarations, raids on unprotected shores. If left unchecked, they can do damage, burning, raping, stealing ships, but they can be contained. We have ships, Stannis said. His jaw was a rock. More than ever before. I have 30 war galleys at King's Landing alone, and more at Dragonstone. We can break them. We should break more than their ships, Robert growled. He was grayer now, his belly a little thicker, his eyes flared with old fury at the news of rebellion. We should break their backs, storm their islands, burn every longship they own. Make them pay tenfold for every village they pillage. You sound eager, Cersei said coolly from her place along the wall. She rarely attended council, but talk of war drew her out. Eager to ride away and leave the court again to those with calmer heads. Robert sneered. Better war than wine and women's whispers, he said. Peace is not made by war alone, Elia intervened. But this is not a matter we can ignore. Greyjoy's defiance challenges the king's authority. If we let it stand, we invite others to do the same. Tywin nodded. Quite, he said. We must respond promptly and decisively. The question is who shall lead the royal host. Who else? Robert said. Give me men and ships. I'll bring you Balon's head. You are no longer a young man, Robert, Jon Arryn said gently. And your wounds from the last rebellion, Robert glared. My wounds are 20 years old, he snapped. I can still swing a hammer, and I will not sit idle while some salt-besotted fool carves himself a crown out of my king's skull. My kings, Aegon said quietly. They all looked at him. He had grown into his face now, the boy's softness largely gone, bones sharpening. He wore a sword at his hip that he knew how to use. My king's skull, Aegon repeated. If Balon Greyjoy calls himself king, he defies me. It is for me to answer that insult. Tywin's eyes narrowed minutely. You would ride to war yourself? He asked. You are not yet 18. Rhaegar led armies at 17, Aegon said, as did many before him. I will not sit here and be seen as a boy while others fight in my name. It is your duty to live to rule, Tywin said, not to chase glory on some wind-lashed rock. This is not glory, Aegon said sharply. It is justice and necessity. If I hide behind my regent every time danger arises, lords will whisper that a Lannister rules in all but name. They whisper it already. I must show them otherwise. Silence fell. It was Elia who broke it. He is right, she said. Tywin looked at her. You would risk the line of your house on some sentimental notion of honor? I would risk it on the strength of my son, she answered. He will be king all his life. He must begin by being king in truth. Let him ride. With proper precautions. With Ser Barristan, Ser Jaime, Jon Connington. With Lord Robert and Lord Stannis commanding the flanks. With a strong host around him. But let him be seen. Let the realm know there is a dragon at its head. Not only a lion's shadow. Tywin's jaw worked. You ask much, he said. He turned to Aegon. If you ride and are killed, the realm will fall again into chaos. Your sister is far away, safe in Dorne. Your brother and sister by law Viserys and Daenerys are younger, less known, less suited to calming a storm. Think on that. I have thought on it, Aegon said. Every night since word of this came. If I stay, Balon Greyjoy's rebellion will not be the last. If I go and die, at least I die as king, not as a puppet. I do not mean to die, Lord Tywin. I mean to win, but I will not let fear of death rule me. He looked around the table. I ask your counsel, he said. I have heard my mother's. I have heard my regents. Lord Robert, Lord Stannis? Lord Arryn? What say you? Jon Arryn looked tired, but his eyes were bright. A king should be seen, he said. If you ride with caution, with sufficient guard, I think it may be done. My men will die for you more readily if they see you at their head, Stannis said bluntly. If you ride, I will ride at your side and see to it that Greyjoy's fleets burn. Robert grinned, some of the old fire back. If the boys got the stones for it, I'd be ashamed to be left behind, he said. I'll hold his shield and keep the blows off as best I can. Then it is decided, Aegon said. He looked at Tywin. My Lord Regent, I value your counsel, but I must choose. If you cannot stand beside me in this, I will find another who can. It was a knife, politely sheathed, but still a knife. Tywin, who had not stepped aside for any man since the day he first took the hand's chain, stared at the boy he had taught. For a heartbeat, Tyrion, watching from the shadows where he always watched, thought his father might refuse, might stand, throw the chain on the table and walk away, let the boy drown in the sea he was so eager to swim. But Tywin Lannister did not walk away from work half done. You have my support, your grace, he said at last, each word measured. If you are resolved, the regent's place is at the king's side. I will ride with you. Aegon's shoulders eased slightly. Good, he said. Then we ride in 3 days. The war that followed was short and brutal. The royal fleet smashed the Ironborn at Fair Isle, Stannis' fireships turning the bay into a boiling trap. On Pike, Aegon led the first assault up the bloody keep steps, his banner snapping above him. He killed his first man there, a reaver with salt in his beard and madness in his eyes. The shock of blood on his sword hilt stayed with him longer than the cheers. Balon Greyjoy bent the knee at last in the great hall of Pike, the stench of smoke and salt thick in the air. Aegon spared his life but took his son Theon as hostage, to be raised at court. It was a compromise between Tywin's urge for total annihilation and Elaya's insistence that their vengeance not leave only ashes. When they returned to King's Landing, banners streaming, bells ringing, Aegon rode at the front of the host. Tywin watched him with a calculating eye. "You have won your war," he said in private, as the city still feasted. "We have won a battle," Aegon corrected. "The wars never end." "Not truly." Tywin's mouth twisted in something that might have been AP. "Perval, you learn," he said. "Good, because, as you have reminded me, my term as regent comes to a close." Aegon turned to face him fully. "Yes," he said, "it does." "Then let us put it in proper form," Tywin said. The next day, in the throne room where they had first faced the choice of peace or doom many years before, Tywin Lannister knelt before the Iron Throne. It was not a posture he had taken often or easily. Every eye in the hall watched him, Elia in her dusky silks. Oberyn returned again for the spectacle. Jon Arryn, older now, hair gone almost all to white. Robert with his cup. Stannis like a carved figure. Cersei beside the queen, her children arrayed like golden ducks. The Stark children were not there. The North was far away. But Ned received the Raven's account and read it long by firelight. "Your Grace," Tywin said, bowing his proud head. "I served your grandsire as hand. I served your father as his commander. I have served you as regent these many years. That service is now at an end. I return to you the powers entrusted to me." He removed the heavy chain of office from around his neck. It clinked as he laid it at Aegon's feet. The hall murmured. The sight of Tywin Lannister on his knees, offering up power, was something few would ever have expected to see. Aegon looked down at him. In that moment, Tyrion thought he looked truly like a king. Not because of the crown on his head, but because of the choices etched in his face. "You have served the realm well," Aegon said. "You have my thanks, Lord Tywin. Rise." Tywin rose. "Will you accept the hand's chain again, now at my pleasure rather than as regent?" Aegon asked. Tywin's eyes met his. There was a moment of understanding between them, a recognition that the balance of power had shifted but not broken. "I will," Tywin said, "until you find another who suits you better." Aegon nodded. He picked up the chain and looped it over Tywin's shoulders himself. "The realm still needs your experience," he said. "But know this, my lord. From this day forth, the final decisions will be mine. I will hear your counsel as I hear my mother's, my uncle's, my lord's. But I will not be ruled by it." A flicker of pride, of unease, of something not easily named, passed over Tywin's face and was gone. "As it should be, your grace," he said. The hall exhaled. Men smiled, some in relief, some in apprehension. They did not know what this new balance would bring. They only knew it would be different. In a quiet village in the Riverlands, a farmer put down his hoe and listened to the distant bell of a sept, thinking nothing of kings. In Winterfell, Jon Snow sparred with his half-brother Robb until both were breathless, dreaming of battles they might someday fight. In Sunspear, Doran Martell read the Raven's report and smiled a slow, secret smile. Time flowed on. The question of what kind of King Aegon would be remained unanswered. A stone above a river not yet stepped upon. He might be cruel. He would certainly be tested again and again. Tywin Lannister, who had chosen peace on a bloody afternoon in a smoke-stained hall, watched his work take its first steps out of his hands. He had created order from chaos, a restored dragon cloaked in a lion's shadow. Whether that dragon would roast the realm or guard, it was no longer his choice alone. He did not trust fate, but he trusted gold, power, and the habit of obedience. He had spent years engraving those habits deep into the bones of Westeros. In the end, perhaps that would be his legacy. Not the blood spilled at his commands or the enemies broken beneath his heel, but the moment he had stayed his hand from killing 2 frightened children in a torn chamber. The moment he had decided that a line unbroken might be better, for his house and the realm both, than a crown snatched in fire. In another world, another choice, the city might have burned, and a stag might have sat the throne, wine in one hand, hammer in the other, a Lannister girl at his side. In that world, the dragons would have fled east, a silver-haired girl growing up among strangers, her brother's bitterness turning to madness. In that world, Tywin's lions would still walk, but on different paths, casting different shadows. In this world, the throne room was cool and empty when night fell. The Iron Throne loomed in the dimness, blades catching the last light. A boy king slept in his chamber, dreams tangled with sea spray and the clash of steel. A regent turned hand sat at his desk, scratching numbers into a ledger. Somewhere in the Red Keep, a dwarf raised a cup and toasted no one in particular. "To choices," Tyrion murmured. "May they damn us less than they might." Outside, the city murmured in its sleep, unaware of the tightrope its rulers walked above it. Ravens roost, ready to bear new words north, south, east, and west. The game went on as it always would, but the board was different now, the pieces set in new places. For the moment, the dragons wore lion-forged chains lightly. For the moment, the lions walked in dragon halls and called it peace. For the moment, that was enough.